Mr. Chairman, I rise in favor of my amendment number 59 to H.R. 4665. This amendment would prohibit the State Department remote work agreements, which allow a domestically assigned employee alternative work site to be located outside of the locality pay area of the regular work site. Now, that's a lot of word that may seem a little bit confusing, but let me explain what I mean. What it is at bottom is it is time for the federal workforce to return to work. This has been the policy of the Republicans in the 118th Congress majority, and my amendment would bring the State Department in line with this stance. Several concerns with federal telework and remote work arose during COVID. One concern, rightfully echoed by countless Americans struggling to make ends meet, was whether federal workers were receiving increased locality pay based off the cost of living in larger cities, while they were actually working remotely from a different location where the cost of living was much less. So, Mr. Chairman, you can imagine my concern when I found that the State Department's Foreign Affairs Manual defines its remote work agreements as full-time core telework arrangements in which the teleworker's alternate work site is located outside of the locality pay area of the regular work site for the employee's position of record. Remote and telework for federal employees should be used sparingly. It should be used to accommodate health issues. It should be used during a crisis. In other words, during select situations. It should not be used as a hidden benefit for federal workers and so that they can pocket extra cost of living cash. Our Republican House majority should be committed to reforming federal remote work so it is fair and reasonable and used only when needed. I urge my colleagues to support my amendment, and I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentlewoman from Wyoming reserves. For what purpose does the gentlewoman from California seek
I rise in opposition to this amendment.
The gentlewoman from California is recognized for 5 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, I understand the underlying wish for all of us to get back to the way things were prior to the onset of the COVID pandemic. However, a total ban seems a bit excessive. The government as a whole is in competition with the private sector for workers. The priority of where they live has changed for some workers, and without being offered this flexibility, the State Department may find it more difficult to recruit or retrain exceptional employees, which seems to be the goal of some on the other side. Technology now exists that was never contemplated only a few years ago, and it opens new possibilities for how to be effective, productive participants in any office, whether physically present or not. We need to ensure that our national security and effective diplomacy is conducted by the most capable employees. Options should be available to the department. I urge my colleagues to oppose this amendment.
One reserve.
I yield back.
The gentlewoman from California yields. The gentlewoman from Wyoming is recognized.
Mr. Chairman, I think there's a misunderstanding on the other side of the aisle as to the purpose of my bill. The purpose of this bill is very simple. If you're being paid to live in Denver and work in Denver, and your cost of living is associated with living in Denver, you should not be able to live in a little tiny town of 300 people 200 miles away that has a substantially less cost of living, but continue to receive your benefits based upon the more expensive cost of living that is in Denver, Colorado. That's just the purpose of this. If you're going to live in a lower cost of living area and telework, you shouldn't be paid as though you're living in a large city. That's the point of this. It's very simple. It's nothing more than about fairness. I think that the American people expect our federal employees to be honest about where they're working and the cost of living that they have, and I do not believe that it's fair, and they don't believe that it's fair that we're actually paying people to live in more expensive areas while they're living in less expensive areas. That is a benefit that we didn't agree to as Congress. I don't believe that it is appropriate, and I urge my fellow members to support amendment number 59. With that, I yield back.
The gentlewoman from Wyoming yields. Gentlewoman from California yields. The question is on the amendment offered by the gentlewoman from Wyoming. Those in favor say aye.